This is an overview of the Theater of Pain boss. The Affront Challengers is a council fight with 3 bosses who do not share health. There isn't much of a healing check on this boss, so I would front load all my cooldowns when all 3 bosses are alive because the fight becomes much easier after the first boss dies. There are 2 abilities to dodge. Noxious spores spawn on the ground underneath players. To handle this, stand on the edge of the room or next to a green puddle in order to bait the puddle when it spawns under you. Decaying Breath is a frontal that you'll need to dodge. There are 3 main abilities to heal. Mighty Smash deals moderate upfront group damage and applies a 30% slow for 10 seconds. This occurs roughly every 45 seconds. Withering Touch is a 12-second dot that does moderate damage and it's applied to 2 players. It can be dispelled. Withering Touch can come out close to the same time as Mighty Smash. Searing Death is the most dangerous ability and you should use a cooldown for it. It marks all players with a circle and pulses damage every 3 seconds for 9 seconds, so do not stack with other players. There is one tank buster called Mortal Strike. It deals damage to the tank and applies a 50% healing reduction for 6 seconds. The meta kill order is Sathel the Accursed first, and then after that it doesn't really matter. Kul'thurok is a spot healing fight with an AoE damage ability that occurs once every 55 seconds. I would use my healing cooldowns on Draw Soul. There are 2 main abilities to heal. Draw Soul deals damage over time to players in the party for 8 seconds. Upon expiration, it spawns an ad that must be killed before it reaches the boss. This requires the group to stack up on the edge of the room in order to spawn the ads in the same spot so the DPS can damage them down. Well of Darkness is a 6-second dot on 2 players that must be spot healed. It occurs every 20 seconds and happens twice in between every Draw Soul cast. Death Spiral creates these balls that float around the room. On lower keys you can take a tick and you'll be fine. There is also a tank frontal called Necrotic Eruption, so don't stand behind the tank. Necrotic Eruption always occurs at the same time as Well of Dark. Xav the Unfallen has a very low healing requirement. Instead, healers' ad damage is very important. It's critical for healers to do as much damage as they can to the ad, while still keeping the tank alive during the tank buster. Because if the ad is still alive during the boss combo, someone might die to the frontal. There is really only one combo of abilities that the healer needs to worry about, and they're cast one after the other. When the boss casts Might of Maldraxxus, which is the first ability every time, the boss jumps to the middle of the room, dealing large amounts of damage, and then casts a combo of 3 abilities that you have to dodge. One is a skinny frontal, one is a wide frontal, and the third is a circle that interrupts cast. These occur in a random order just to keep you on your toes. The combo happens every 30 to 35 seconds roughly. The boss casts a tank buster called Brutal Strike. It happens twice in between every single Might of Maldraxxus combo. The last thing to talk about is the Oppressive Banner ad. The boss spawns a banner that slows players by 15%. You must kill this banner before the Might of Maldraxxus combo. Gorechop. There are 4 things to remember for this boss. Babysit the tank, stay close to melee, dodge chains as they go across the room, and do not stack with anyone, ever. The primary source of unavoidable damage comes from the ads in the form of Leaping Thrash. They jump to random players and do damage to people under them. So if you're stacking with someone, you will take damage from when they're jumped on and when you're jumped on. So the golden rule is do not stack. There's a tank buster called Hateful Strike and it's kind of potent, so tanks will probably need help. Tenderizing Smash pulls you into the boss and then deals damage. If you're within 8 yards already, it won't pull you in and it'll be easier to dodge. You'll have more time. If you're really far away from the boss, it'll pull you a longer distance, which will take more time, and then you won't have as much time to run out. Generally, you should try to stay close to melee for another reason too, because the jumpers won't jump so far and they'll die faster, and that's the biggest incoming damage. So the faster the ads die, the less damage you deal with. The last thing to talk about are the meat hooks. Meat hooks swing from across the room and skewer anyone who gets hit by them. Mordretha is the final boss, and she is by far the hardest boss to heal in the dungeon. She becomes empowered when she reaches 50% health, so try not to blow any 2-minute cooldowns until then. If you have a 1-minute cooldown, I'd use it at 25 seconds in, and then it's back up when the boss gets low. I would also recommend using Bloodlust at 50% while you're learning the boss. There are 3 main unavoidable damaging abilities on this boss: Manifest Death, Grasping Rift, and Echo of Carnage, and sometimes they can happen all at once. Manifest Death applies a circle onto every party member that explodes for damage. Make sure people are topped and do not stack during this mechanic. Grasping Rift pulls players towards the rift. It also does a dot. If you get sucked into the rift, you'll probably die. When the boss reaches 50% health, she casts Echoes of Carnage, which does big upfront damage to the group. It also applies a dot called Echo of Carnage and lasts the remainder of the encounter. She also spawns ghostly ads that deal damage to nearby players when she's below 50% health. Reaping Scythe is a tank buster and it does not travel behind them, so just don't stand on the tank. Dark Devastation is a frontal that the boss does in a circle similar to the second boss of Necrotic Wake. Ghostly Charge. The boss calls horsemen to run across the battlefield periodically, so you have to dodge them. Time for some special notes because the boss is so hard. The difficult overlaps to deal with in this fight occur when Manifest Death and Grasping Rift are cast within 5 seconds of each other. This overlap occurs 25 seconds in, and then 50 to 70 seconds afterward. A rule of thumb is to try to save your big healing cooldowns for when the boss is below 50%. The second rule is to not blow your big cooldowns when it's just Grasping Rift, which is the pull-in.